Some, very good specialist classic riders. So, a good ride by the rider from Britannia.
Surrounded by motorcycles. They've got a Mavic neutral service motorcycle behind them. On the left-hand side, you can see the legacy of this area. It's mining. There's a little plinth and monument to the great rider Sean Stablinski here on the left-hand side as you go into Arenberg. Stablinski, a former miner himself, wanted to never ever go down the mines again and decided, like so many riders of the past, they either came from a heavy industrial background or from the mining background. And here we go. This is the Arenberg Trench as they're coming up to it. 4 riders. It's okay for these guys, but they are going to hit this as hard as they possibly can when they arrive with the peloton. Tell us, Sean, exactly what is it like to ride this?
Well, it's a great position for the 4 riders out in front because they can ride onto it at a good, strong pace. They have no pushing, no fighting to do because with 4 riders, it makes it so much more safe. So it's a great position to be in with a minute and a half an advantage. But back in the peloton, it's going to be hectic, and we will see the shots now. As the peloton arrive there will be so much movement on the front end of the peloton, and I'd not be surprised if we could see some crashes before we get onto the cobblestones of Wallers. So back in the bunch is a real nervous time for everybody, but if you can make it into a breakaway and get into this section as we have our 4 riders here, it's a lovely position to be in.
But you look at the bumping and boring of these men here. Now behind them though, Sean, it's going to be like a flat-out sprint, isn't it, to get in here at the right position. That's why Thor Hulshoff had a puncture exactly the wrong time. You've got to be at the front, and it's almost like a lead out for a sprint to get into this Arenberg section.
Yes, and I think it's worse than some of the big sprints we see at the end of a race, because there's so many riders want to be up front. Still with 80 riders, a lot of riders feeling really good, and it can be just hectic as we can see the bunch going on to the Arenberg section.
Bogdanos at the back there, they're just piling through at the moment, being led out fast by BMC, try and keep everybody out of trouble. Remember last year was Ewan Blarch, I think, from NetApp, wasn't it, who came down a right cropper here. Now the cobbled sets on this particular section, Sean, are not as rough as they used to be, but they're still much different to the ones on the other sections.
Yes, well, they are a very rough section. It's a long section as well because it's 2.4 kilometers long, and it is one of the worst sections, and I think it's also the time of the race as well. You still have a lot of riders with 93 kilometers to the finish roughly. You have a lot of riders in the bunch. You still have 80 plus riders, so there's a lot of movement before. So to get positioned to get onto this section, it's always very, very hectic. Where in the final of the race, in the last 50 kilometers, you haven't got as many riders fighting to be up front, and that makes it a little bit easier.
It's not quite as hectic as it used to be here, because as our breakaway men come into shot here, you can see on the left-hand side where all the spectators are. It's all barriered now. They've got these little tapes here. That never used to happen, and often you'd see riders like nipping over to the right-hand side to get behind them and get onto the mud and get onto the pathway and come back onto the Arenberg Trench. It's all churned up on the left-hand side deliberately.
Yes, I think they've actually ploughed it up.
I think so, yeah, deliberately so.
Looking at that yesterday, to just keep the riders off, because you would get a lot of riders in the conditions we've got today, where it's really dry, it would be really hard, and the riders would just go onto the side. So for that reason, they have just ploughed it up a bit to prevent the riders from riding off the cobble section.
Yeah, it used to be exactly like that. So we've had some terrible accidents here. As you say, Fignon fell here. Johan Museu broke his leg awfully. Really badly here. One of the worst crashes we've ever seen in the Arenberg Trench in modern times. Anyway, but I think that was coming from the other direction.
Yes,
possibly, yeah.
Yes. Well, we did come from the other direction, I think, on maybe 2 occasions. This section, coming from this direction, is certainly, a real fast run in onto the cobblestones, as we can see here. Finney is pushing on just out of the front of the bunch, and probably a little bit nervous at this point, and it's a good place to be. Just get through this section, and there's a relief.
There we go. Geraint Thomas in the wrong place on the left-hand side, and being run off the road just a little bit. Oh dear. And chains being pulled on quite dramatically. As soon as you get off the road here, you're in trouble. Taylor Phinney being caught up. I think it's Huterovic, I think, probably, who was in trouble there. This is Stuart O'Grady pushing on, and there are riders closing in. Now 43 seconds. At some point towards the end here now, sometimes, Sean, in the second half of the Arenberg Trench, you see the big favourites try and play their hands sometimes. Bonan did so. I don't think Cancellara is going to do that here. We've seen Finney, though, out in the front, showing he's still fairly strong, or he is strong.
Yes, I think Finney is just probably a little bit nervous to get through this section, and of course the safest place to be out in front and just make your own way through it. Take your own line where you want to ride over the cobble section, and Finney's continue on to push on here, but I think he will knock it off when he gets through this section and see what's what situation is. As we can see here, still the big group of riders together, and it's going to be an important one, and tactic is going to be important here when we come out of this one, because I think we will see a lot of riders trying to get into a group, and we can see up front as well at the group of O'Grady, they're not really hammering it at this moment. They are just keeping out in front and get through this section, and then analyse the situation when they get through this Wallers section.
Yeah, I'm not sure that they're all going for it here at all. They've got through it. As a little bit more effort goes into just looking around rather than going hard at it. I don't think anybody's gone particularly hard. Nice to see Bernie Eisel up towards the front of the group there as they got onto Finney. He was there, I think. These are our 4 breakaway men. They've got 38 seconds, but Sean, doesn't look as though they want to really push hard at the moment. We're still 90 kilometres to go. They've just got to keep rolling along.
Well, I think the tactic may be that they're just knocking it off a bit. They don't want to be too far ahead of this group of big favourites because they're thinking that they want some riders to come across to them, and that's what they need, because with 4 riders at the moment, with still over 90 kilometres to go, it's a long way with 4 riders, so they're probably hoping that they will be joined by some others out of the group.
I think they're all pretty happy that the weather is so much better than it has been over the last few weeks. Some big favourites. The last bomb was just looking up and across over the peloton. Lots of questions coming in about that, obviously on Twitter at Spokesmen, SPOKESMEN, about the technical aspects of the bikes. Once again, we're just having a look at some of them. Is looking at the bikes themselves, you can see a lot of them running these second levers now on the top of the bars, very cyclocross style. That's people were talking about those in Flanders last week, saying, well, we haven't seen those before. Very much an introduction in cyclocross. There are some riders even in this group riding cyclocross bikes. Good choice. I mean, for some riders, they really feel as though they are happier on that. The AG2R rider there has a cyclocross bike. You can tell from the big, thick, heavy forks and those cantilever brakes on it. Also, Europe, some of the French actually prefer going with those. The Europe car rider there at the back also, I think it's Bjorn Theroux actually, Didi Theroux's son, who's running the cyclocross bike there. So cantilever brakes, bigger tyres, wider section tyres, as Sean was saying, 27s, all tubulars. Tubular tyres are great for this sort of thing, as Ladagnu comes towards the front and just we're looking behind to see if anybody's going to give us some help. Jose Van Gutierrez there as well behind him in the blue of Movistar. Tubular tyres much more capable of dealing with those big hits because they squash, well, they squash better. They're obviously just a tube. Somebody asking the question, is it inevitable you're going to puncture at Paris-Roubaix? Not at all. There are a lot of punctures though. In fact, you punctured, didn't you, Sean, when you were recceing yesterday?
Yes, in the last 200 metres I had a flat, and it's not the first time I've had one in Arenberg. When I was competing as well, one year I did have about halfway through the Arenberg section, I had a flat and had to ride all the way to the end. Yeah, it's real nervous times when you do have a flat at this moment, because we can see here the group of big favourites. There's maybe 45 riders, 50 riders. It's interesting now to see how many riders will make their way back in. We can see here there's a number of riders trying to make it back into that group, and I think this group will grow a bit because there's a lot of tactics going on here. We can see off the front there's 4 riders trying to pull away, but a lot of action on the front of the bunch, and if we get a little bit where they start looking at each other and the teams waiting, well then there will be a lot more riders will make it back into the main peloton.
Sector 17 as we count down for the breakaway riders at Wallace here. Going through the newly reintroduced Pont-Gibus section. Very, very tight because it's a little railway bridge and very, very narrow underneath. We'll have to all be pretty careful about that as the rest of the peloton decide to enter at this point in our picture. And I'm glad we've got some new fans of Paris-Roubaix. Somebody's just sent me a picture of their small boy watching. He must be about 4 or 5. I don't know if my little one's watching. He's probably racing around there, screaming around the house doing something. Cannondale, Blanco, Cofidis at the front. There's the Pont-Gibus as our riders go through it. This has just been resurfaced with cobbles. All the salt cobble sets have been put in. Terribly dusty, but it's all been done by the friends of Paris-Roubaix. This section reintroduced. Hasn't been into the Paris-Roubaix for quite a while. There you are. You can see how narrow that little bridge is. It's a good job they're all strung out here. Very dusty, this section, Sean.
Yes, and I think it's more dusty it'll get during the day because with the sunshine we've got, and I think the drying conditions, it will get real dust in the end. But again, as we can see here, it's not a problem for the riders. The visibility is quite good, and it's certainly much better conditions than if we had the rain and that real slippery conditions. It would not be nice at all, and that will also have an effect on the race because the riders will hang in much longer. I think we will have riders coming back after getting over the sections, so the number of riders in the main peloton will be quite big for a long time, where if you have real horrible conditions, wet sections of cobbles, well then through crashes you will lose a lot of riders, where today we haven't got that situation.
And the fans just having to get out of the road as we enter a tarmac link between our cobbled sections. Now we've just been through the section of Wallace. Now we're going to Honan. And the problem with setting a bike up for these cobbles is it's been more better these days, but setting things up in the past is you have to make the bike handle on the road as well as off it. It's not just a case of having one that goes over cobblestones. There are 52.6 kilometers of cobbles to go over, and 202 kilometers in total to ride. So it's not just a case of setting up your bike for cobbles. You've got to be able to ride on the road with it as well. See how wide the tires are compared to normal, though. Running at lesser pressures as well, and that also makes it a little bit more hard going. Something like 50 psi, maybe even less for some. Between 45 and 60, depending on what they want to run. .22 seconds for our front 4 men. There's a chasing group of 7 now trying to get across to them, make a bigger group. They might just ease up a little bit here as they see them coming across. Here we go. Stiegmans, Heyman, Koretsky and O'Grady here, being chased by Robert Wagner, the Blanco rider, with the roundels on the end of his, or the bands on the end of his sleeve, for former German champion. William Bonnet of Francis de Jure, Jens Kukeler of Orica Green Edge, Marco Bandiera of I Am Cycling, Christian Corin is also in there, and Adrien Petit of Cofidis. Cannondale is Christian Corin's team, of course, was riding for Liquid Gas before, but they're not very far behind, are they, the peloton? 19 seconds only is the gap between the two. O'Grady, winner in 2007. Here are the chasing group. Wagner on the front. Bonnet coming through, big rider. I'll tell you another rider who might do well today is Sebastianino from IAM. There's still such a long way to go, 83 kilometers. And some riders really hanging on though at the back now. Becoming a little bit difficult for some already, as trying to stamp down on the pedals and stay up with everybody else is Johan Labon. Well, this group of 7 not managed to get too far away. ...14 seconds now, coming back together. It's been an interesting day so far. Lots of attacks early on, and Radio Shack having to respond to them. Looked like a promising breakaway, this one, but it's been brought back together. It's not just been Radio Shack that had to do the work here to pull it back. There's been lots of other teams doing the chasing to drag things all back together. It's very interesting, nothing being able to get away. And this seems to have been the pattern, Sean, for a number of races now, or certainly for a couple of years. There's not anything really being let get away, not the big long breaks we used to have.
Well, I think we've seen it of very recent, the Tour of Flanders last week. It was 90k into the race before the group of 7 were allowed to get away, and that wasn't from the want of trying, certainly, because, you know, the pace was really high. They were riding at 44, 45 average in the first 2 hours, I think it was, and it's just that, you know, so many teams want to be represented up front. They want to get a man in the breakaway. You get 4 or 5 riders get out ahead, as we have here, and there's other teams always want to chase. And of course, with Cancellara being the big favourite, well, then Radio Shack controlling quite a lot. But it's not only Radio Shack, as you say, other teams as well. And we can see the situation here. A lot of teams trying to get off the front. Radio Shack are just allowing that to happen at the moment. Allow those riders, you know, to have a bit of a race between themselves and just, you know, leave it happen, and to get into the race as far as possible before they have to take control, if they have to take control of the race. And, you know, that is something tactically, if you can do that, the moment you have to do it, you have the riders there. But when there's other teams you know, up front and attacking and keeping the pace very high, well, then you just allow them to do that.
Radio Shack have 3 men on the front of the main peloton. The third one is Fabian Cancellara. This is section 16. This is a long one. Nearly 4 kilometers of this, but this one was in, I think, the Tour a couple of years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago, and not actually quite as rough as some of the others, but long. We finished the Tour de France in Arenberg. Not on the Tanché d'Arenberg, but they finished actually at the town of Arenberg, and I think Thor Hushovd won the stage, I remember. Geraint Thomas was right at the front and made a go for it at the end, and I think Thor Hushovd picked everybody to the line. It was the time when we saw Armstrong came back, didn't he? He punctured twice. He was with Radio Shack, and he punctured twice on the cobbled section, and I was amazed how well Alberto Contador rode the cobbles. We were quite surprised. I saw Johan van Summeren up towards the front as well. Van Summeren, well, I think he's going quite well, Van Summeren. Definitely an outside contender, that's for sure. He's a former winner here. Very long section of cobbles. 11 seconds only for our breakaway men then. And as you can see, you can even see it from the motorcycle here, it's not quite as rough, this, as some of the others. Well, what about some of those outsiders that could upset the apple cart today? I think there's a number of names who you could see, if they have the legs, somewhere towards the front. Sebastianino we mentioned already. He was good in Tour of Flanders. Hausler seems to be getting a little better as time goes on. Maybe we'll see him in the front. Degenkolb, what do you think of Degenkolb, Sean? He's certainly got the build for it. Looked very happy yesterday, and I think it's been going all right.
Yes, he's certainly got the build, and he's got the power. He's a big, powerful rider, and he should be certainly able to do this one, you know, pan flat, and it will be interesting to see. And he's proved in the past that he can do the distance as well, and that is the important thing in the big classics where you have the 260 kilometres. Some of the riders have difficulty getting through that, and I think Degenkolb should be there today. Also, with the drier conditions, you know, the riders who are maybe not as experienced as some of the real big favourites here, Degenkolb maybe wouldn't have that great experience, but still, you know, with the dry conditions today, it should suit him that little bit better.
Other riders that might well be well, we haven't a clue what Pipo Pozzato will do. Filippo Pozzato is either really good or complete rubbish. Last week in Flanders, he was complete rubbish, but then he was just nowhere to be seen, to be honest. It's a bit unfair on him, but he wasn't anywhere to be seen. Jürgen Rollins, this is Michael Schaar, the Swiss rider, going up the outside on the grass section, getting around them and trying to get away. Jürgen Rollins was very good last week in Tour of Flanders, and has certainly got the form. If he can carry that through the week, as you most usually can, he could well be up there. Dmitry Murev, you never know. He's a very strong rider, and sometimes he really turns in an interesting performance in races like this. Bozic, what do you think of Bozic? He's getting stronger and stronger each year, I think.
Yes, I think Bozic is performing well, but again, Paris-Roubaix maybe, you know, that little bit more difficult. So many kilometres of cobbles, you know, over 50 kilometres. The Tour of Flanders, you know, you see the riders there, they can put in a good performance, and some riders can, you know, perform real well in the Tour of Flanders, but when you get to Paris-Roubaix, they just suffer that bit more in the end. So it's the riders, you know, who we've seen in the past up in the Paris-Roubaix are the ones who you would really expect, you know, to be showing today. But again, the conditions have an important part to play in this one, and today the real good conditions, we could see a guy like Bozic, it is possible that we could see them in the end of the race today, as there is so many others who are, you know, in the Tour of Flanders last week, very much to the fore in the final 50 kilometres. They are the ones you would be expecting to see here today.
Stigmans and Heyman still pushing on here. Marcus Burkhardt, another rider I think could do very well here. That we, you know, it's such a lottery, this race. If the Fabian Cancellara situation is taken away, it's such a lottery. Stannard and Thomas. Well, Geraint Thomas having a little bit of trouble on the Arenberg there, but not really a problem. Stannard crashing earlier in the day. We're back on Eisel. He's a big threat. Bernard Eisel. Stannard, of course, and Thomas, both specialists at this sort of thing. Thomas has been very successful at junior level here. Sebastian Turgot, second last year, of course. But for me, there's Arnold de Meer. What do you think of Arnold de Meer, the young sprinter? I don't think he's too bad for this either.
Well, again, you know, as a sprinter, you know, you can ride. You know, they're so good bike handlers. It is important. It's an important part of this race, and we've seen Armand de Meer, you know, in the sprints. He is a spectacular bike handler, so he should be able to get through it. Will he have the, you know, the energy and the power in the end? I would be concerned about that he will run out in the final 35 kilometres when the race is really going. But it depends if he can get into a move that goes, you know, 40-50 kilometres in the finish. I think that will be the opportunity for a rider like Armand de Meer.
Section 16 left now, and as you can see, the Blanco mechanic and Sonia, they're holding up wheels at the end of here. That's just, as you see in Flanders as well, just to make sure that everybody is, there's Bozic, we were just talking about him, to make sure that everybody has got what they need. And does Bozic run wide, or does he stop to take a wheel? No, runs wide. I think avoiding the Blanco mechanic, actually. Ladagnou can do well, I think, here. Lars Bohm, we know, can go very well here. What about Edvald Bosenhagen? Sean, we were talking about him over dinner last night. I think he really has to show something today.
Well, I think, we've been expecting him to show well in the last number of years. And last year, we remember that he was in that final shake-up, and when Tom Bonan went in the attack, we did see Sky riding, and it was for Bosenhagen, but he just ran out of power in the final 25 kilometres. He is in good shape, and to be interesting to see what he can do today. He is due a big performance because he's that style of rider. He's a big, strong, powerful rider. He's proved that in the past, and I am a little bit surprised that it's taken him so long to really shine in the final of the big classics.
"53 seconds now, and Radio Shack in control. Hard work for mechanics and soigneurs on this race. You have to be in all the right places at all the right times. 76.5 to go. Welcome back. Oh, it's exciting. It's Paris-Roubaix. And the weather's fantastic. And the junior Paris-Roubaix has just come into the velodrome as well. We don't know who it is yet, but there's a Danish guy, I think, who's just come over the line first. And I think I saw a Sky skin suit third. But, or Sky backed skin suit. British one. And we'll just have to see, get the results of that. This is the section of Wallang. Steegmans and Heyman pressing on by themselves here. Heyman's a good rider for this race, Sean. In fact, they were sort of an embarrassment of riches sometimes in terms of riders of Sky, but Heyman another good rider. We haven't mentioned Juan Antonio Flecha much yet, apart from early on in the broadcast. He's so close all the time, and he wasn't that bad at Flanders either. Had a mechanical late on, had to chase back on, and did that with some style, some aplomb.
Yes, very impressive, because it was in closer on the 25 kilometres to the finish, and the race was really on. And when he had the mechanical, I thought it was going to be over for him, that he would never see that group of big favourites again, but managed to make his way back into it. And that proves that, he was still quite comfortable when he had the mechanical at that point. And it is, it is good to see that. And he has certainly the experience, because, every time he rides here, he's been up there in the places, in the top 10, and second, thirds and fourths, all sorts of places, but never the winner. So he could
whoa, look at this. On the cobbles again, and right in the middle, just a coming together, 2 or 3 riders ending up in the ditch on the left hand side, I fear, and the right hand side as well. Is everybody up? Okay, Bozic, one of the riders down, a Vacancellara rider on the floor. Is that Thomas again? Geraint Thomas getting caught up in another crash. And down towards the back of the peloton, the rider from Bretagne is Gael Malacan. Mathieu Ladagnu being caught up in this as well, but seems to be back on the bike. But Thomas again on the ground. Bozic looking extremely dusty, and the Vacancellara rider all curled up, couldn't quite see who it was.
No, and unfortunate for Geraint Thomas once again. He was caught up in that crash, as we see.
Puncture for Koretsky.
Yes, and it's I think it's a moment where he's just about hanging out there, and he's paying for the efforts earlier on. The stronger men, as we can see out front, are pushing on, but that is such a familiar sight of Paris-Roubaix. The crashes, even in the dry conditions, there's always going to be quite a number of crashes, and unfortunate for Geraint Thomas, maybe the wrong place at the wrong time, and that is Paris-Roubaix. You can be just in the unlucky place at that moment.
Oh dear, 1 or 2 go down, and then it's absolute carnage. Running into the ditches either side, and then further back, somebody just pulling on the anchors a little bit hard there, Sean, about 5 or 6 back from the crash, and starting another pile-up as well. Cancellara and co keeping out of trouble at the front. 72 at a half K remaining, and there'll be all sorts of riders now trying to fight back on. Bert de Backer trying to get back on here. Cruising rather than going hard is Andreas Clear, and being fought back now, this is Filippo Pozzato. Held up, I would think. Filippo Pozzato being held up by the crash and trying to work his way back on as hard as possible here. Manuel Cancellara is the rider from BMC. Distinctive style. He's very, very slender, but with quite a big head. You can see him quite easily. Yannis Tamaridis in this group, the Greek track sprinter. Oh, he's got some illustrious company with him. This must be real hell for the Greek guy. There he is for Euskaltel. And this is right at the back, Jonas Jorgensen. In a world of trouble trying to hang on here. Luca Paolini riding up towards the front with the white helmet and the red and white there. Again, he was one of my outside choices for the Tour of Flanders. The pursuing riders at 27 seconds. That's the two behind our lead men, Gert Steegmans and Matthew Heyman. Michael Schär and Stuart O'Grady are trying to catch them. These are our two leading men. Heyman and Steegmans. Steegmans often the lead-out man for Tom Bonen. A bit off the leash here today. Sean, he can do as he likes, really. He's got, although he has still got Sylvain Chavanel, who may or may not want to be worked for.
Well, I think Omega Pharma Quick-Step, you know, they haven't got a real big favourite like, for example, last year with Tom Bonen. He was in unbelievable condition, and it was, of course, everybody Bonen last year. With Sylvain Chavanel, he's riding very well, but I don't think they're going to, you know, play solely that card and everybody working for him. And, you know, they put Steegmans out in front, and I think that is the tactic I know they have planned. And the problem is for the two here at the moment, you know, just over a minute in advance, still over 70 kilometers to go. They have been out for a long time now. It is going to be, you know, a big ask for them to hold on out there all the way to the finish. They need a bigger group. They need that group of 12-15 riders, and unfortunately that hasn't happened, or it hasn't been allowed maybe by the other teams. And Radio Shack, I think, are the ones which maybe are, you know, taking control of the situation. When there's a bigger group trying to escape off the front of the bunch, well, then they close it down very quickly. And for me, I think for Cancellara, everything is working to plan at the moment, because they have it pretty much very well under control.
Former winner Stuart O'Grady with Michael Schär, the Swiss rider, for company. O'Grady opting for the centre of the cobbles, now the crown of the road. Schär still staying on the left-hand side. This is a rather rough section at Tilloy, which is why they went for the gutter first of all. And Schär just moving over to the right-hand side, adjusting his line, using his shoulders and his body weight to keep that bike in line. A number of people writing in as they get to Tilloy, the peloton, on @spokesman, including the fine website, fine blog site Inner Ring, saying there were stories of 2 cars being removed from the race for bad driving. Have you heard any confirmation of that? No, we haven't heard confirmation, but we did hear Jean-François Pechot giving it large, shall we say, to BMC, and Francis de Jeux, I think it was it not?
Yes.
Saying, that's it, you are off the race, do that again. So we're not really sure whether they went or not, or whether, as Sean would say, Pechot is playing the game to get them back in line. We don't know is the answer to that. I wouldn't think so, but it's certainly been, he was certainly giving them a right old yelling, Sean.
Yes, he was, and that is Paris-Roubaix. You know, the director sportifs and the team cars, they really, you know, pushed their luck to the limits. And of course, Jean-François Pechot, the director of the race, you know, he was getting, you know, very, very aggressive on radio tour, and you have to, because if you take, for example, the Arenberg section,
yeah,
a lot of the team cars, you have your number and you have to stay to that line in the cavalcade, but a lot of the team cars and the director sportifs, the tactic is they get one of their riders. If you have a rider hanging on the rear of the peloton, he put his hands up, he called for the car just as you get to Arenberg, just to get a good position for the car going into Arenberg. You may not need any service at all, but you can still put up your hand and say you want to give a raincoat or you know, your arm warmers, and that's where they're really strict. So I think Jean-François Pechot was just really laying down the law and making sure that all the teams, you know, behaved to the regulations.
Tor Hushoff, by the way, this is Michael Schär we're watching, but Tor Hushoff's had another puncture. And not being a good day for Hushoff. Whee, come on, Michael. Stay online. Well, he's got the bit between his teeth, trying to get across to Gert Steegmans and Matt Hayman. He's left to the former winner, Stuart O'Grady, behind him, and Hayman pushing on at the front here with Steegmans in his wheel. Schär will try and get across them. I wouldn't be surprised if he does get across to them. Is there anybody unluckier than Geraint Thomas, somebody writes? Is it unlucky, or do you make your luck, Sean?
Well, that is
a bit of both.
Yes, that is the question. You make it, yeah. You make it sometimes, and sometimes there's experience as well. That you see those things are going to happen. But with the crashes, it's very, very difficult. It just happens so quickly. We see there that crash with Geraint Thomas. It looked to me that maybe a rider touched the wheel, and down he went, and of course then panic braking, and a lot more riders crashed into each other further back in the peloton. But yeah, it's unlucky. And you talk about Tor Hushoff now. He's had, this is the third time he's a mechanic today, so he's been, really unlucky today, and that's something the mechanical. It's difficult to avoid, but if you're riding real well, you're feeling comfortable. It's amazing how much you can avoid some of the maybe the holes in the sections of cobblestones where it's a little bit more uneven surface. When you're in good condition, you can ride, you can pick your line much better, but when you start getting tired, that's the time you do not see those sections, and your reaction is not as quick. But I think at this moment, for the rider like Tor Hushoff, he shouldn't have a problem at the moment, so I think it's just totally unlucky on the day, and having so many punctures, and that's going to be, as we mentioned earlier on, it's going to be difficult for Hushoff. If he does make it back into the leading group, I think from all the efforts he's been making to get back into the peloton, he has to pay for that later on.
50 kilometers an hour here on the road with Gert Steegmans and Matt Hayman. That's what it says on the dial there. There you can see in the back of the specialized bike of Gert Steegmans those little shock absorbing, I guess would be wrong, shock dampening sections in the seat stays, and there's also similar in the forks as well. A lot of people were asking, is suspension banned? No, they're not. It's not banned at all. It was used 15 years ago now, let me think. Yeah, about that. 20 years ago actually, and they just found it wasn't quite as good, really. You had to ride the road sections as well as the off-road sections, and that makes it very difficult. Just makes it a bit heavier and more unwieldy. There is Steegman's bike. If we get a wider shot, you'll see those elastomer sort of sections in the front fork as well, as Michael Schär comes, and this is Hushoff coming back in. Tor Hushoff, another effort had to be made to get back into the peloton here after a third mechanical already. Unlucky for the Norwegian, really. Okay, 1:14 the gap for our breakaway men over the peloton as Hushoff makes. Welcome back. Sylvain Chavanel, replete with food now. Stuffing it in its back pocket. Little casquette turned up at the front. Very classy, very classy. We like that. With 65.5 kilometers still to go. All sheep. Next big section of cobblestones still to go, and obviously there are some very, very important places still we're going to get through in terms of cobbles. There's a lot still available here in this race for anybody who wants to have the nous and the courage to get away. Tor Hushoff, who's had all sorts of troubles today. 3 mechanicals, 2 punctures at least today. Not sure what the third mechanical was. Could well have been another puncture. Now he's managed to get back onto the peloton again. Has he got the legs? We don't know. We just don't know his form. So let's ask him what he thinks anyway.
Yeah, for me it's the most beautiful one the races there is in cycling. So and then also the race, the biggest race I can win. I've been closest to win. So I'm going to do everything I can to stay in the front, be on the podium, and why not why not win?
And for someone who is watching the race for the first time of his life, what are the key points of this race?
Oh, there are some key points. Yeah, there's few. I mean, with Arenberg and the sections after Arenberg is important, and because it's the hardest one, and that's where you make the selection. So. But you know, you always have to race in front in this race, because if you race behind, there's a crash in front of you, the race is over.
And one word about the Carrefour de l'Arbre when you crashed a few years ago?
Yeah, Carrefour de l'Arbre is, I would say, it's the last key point. That's the last hardest cobblestone section. So there you can lose the race, you can get dropped because it's so hard, and also you can do like me, crash in the last corner. But this will not happen this year.
Tor Hrushov, feeling fairly upbeat, really. I'm not sure he's thinking exactly the same now, having had 3 mechanicals. 64 to go. Wallop into another section of cobblestones for our peloton. This is Orchy, and Stuart O'Grady has been swallowed up. Michael Schär still by himself, trying to hunt down Gert Steegmans and Matt Hayman. And now new people. This is a good opportunity, Sean, for people to go on the bit of the counter here.
Well, I think if there's a little bit of slowdown on the front of the peloton, there will be, a lot of riders who will try and, go in the counter, and that will be the tactic and the orders coming from team directors. When you look at the, I think we're roughly about 12-15 minutes up on the fast stage average time, which is 42 kilometers per hour. So we have been going real fast, and the pace has been very high all the time. After coming through Bois de Wallers, it did slow down for a moment, but only for a little while, and the pace is still just real high. So it's going to be difficult for a rider or a group of 2 or 3 riders to get out of the front of the peloton. You have to have a group of 12-15 men to have any chance of pulling a big advantage or a nice advantage from the front of the peloton, and it doesn't look like that's happening at the moment for anybody or any team.
Still pretty chilly here under the awning. I'm looking down to the seats on the other side of the corridor, just ahead of us. And the next platform down, whoever those guests are, they seem to have nice bunches of treats on the seats. We'll have to go and raid them later. I'll send Sean out on a raiding party. So it's good. Having a double Paris-Roubaix winner with you is very good, because if you take anybody's sweeties, nobody complains. 1 minute and 9 seconds is the gap.
And now we can see the dry conditions. The riders can ride, on the side, off the stone sections totally. And with the dry conditions we've been getting the last number of days, you can do that, and you save that little bit of energy here, and that is important for later on. So any opportunity, any occasion the riders get that, they will do that. But again, as we said, sometimes there's a bit too much grit on the side, so that is always a risk when you do that. But we could see the riders riding on the grass there, and it's so dry, and it's been so dry, it's possible to do that here today.
One of the other bikes in the peloton that was pioneered last year by Fabian Cancellara, that's giving a little bit more comfort, and apparently works absolutely brilliantly. I confess I've not ridden one yet. Is the new, well, not so much new now, but the Domain, the Trek Domain, which has almost a pivot point around where the seat cluster is, where the seat stay joins the down tube and the top tube, and allows a flex in there. It's nearly 3 centimeters, 30 millimeters. Apparently works absolutely brilliantly, so I've heard. Going well, these two. Gert Steegmans looking good, as is Matt Hayman of Sky behind him. This is Michael Schär riding by himself to try and get across here. A lot of effort expended to get over to these 2 other riders. Beautiful day here in this is Damien Goudin of Europe Cup, wore the yellow jersey in Paris-Nice, having won the prologue, which was rather a surprise, Sean.
Yes, it was a surprise. He certainly, you know, did a great performance in the Paris-Nice, but he is that style of rider. He doesn't look it when you see him here to be a rider who could do a very short prologue in Paris-Nice. I think it was around 2.5 kilometres. Another crash here.
Oh, you're gonna have to watch them out here. Oh, that was nasty, clipping the side of the pavement there. Oh. I think the Euskaltel rider falling very. Oh, it's Ladagnu. This is Ladagnu. Mathieu Ladagnu, one of my outside favourites. Ladagnu's in all sorts of pain there. Well, wrong place in the peloton. Down somewhere near the back for Mathieu Ladagnu. And the two of them catching that curb. Well, that's a big blow for, literally, for Mathieu Ladagnu, Sean. He's going to be in a lot of pain there. You just have to get up and get going again if you can.
Yes, well, hopefully not too much damage and you can get going. We could see Visconti there as well from the Movistar team. He was also on the ground there. But, you know, again, it's such a familiar thing. In Paris-Roubaix, you come off this section of cobblestones. There's possibly, you know, a lot of dust on the tyres as well. And we have seen that so many times in the past where, you know, riders just slide out in the corners for no reason whatsoever. And it looked like that was the situation as well, that somebody maybe slided, or possibly somebody just touched the curb. But if you're, you know, if you're close or if you're just behind those riders, well, then it's very difficult to avoid it.
Yeah, I think possibly grounded a pedal going out onto that, because there was a two-stepped little curbstone there. What the curb and then the flower bed just raised a little bit, and maybe he just clipped a pedal there. Not good for Mathieu Ladagnu, for Visconti. I didn't quite catch who the Euskaltel rider was, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if it was Tamaridis, to be honest, because he was fighting to stay somewhere up with the peloton. Sector 12, all sheet. This is a crucial section here. Have to be on their guard here. It's a very rough section, all sheet. It's only 1.7 in length compared to some of the others, but it's a rough old section. We used this, I think, in the Tour de France. Michael Schär just showing, look, don't grab the bars hard. He's got his hands nice and relaxed, wrists nice and relaxed, and their belts, letting your arms and your legs be the shock absorbers there. Everybody across the front of the road, a whole mixture of teams here, Sean, now, and they look like they're trying to tee themselves up for this next section. All a little bit nervous.
Yes, looks a bit nervous in the front there. We can see it looked like Bernie Eisel. We can see Fletcher there on the front, and as you said, David, this section, Orchies, it's also, you know, not a long one, but it's a difficult one as well. Some of the cobble sections are, you know, very, very difficult, and everybody getting a little bit more nervous here. And I think, you know, we're coming to the point now, 58 kilometres to finish. Possibly, you know, they're wondering what they can do here, because with the group at the moment, our men out front only over a minute in advantage. It's possible that, you know, they're thinking of doing something here. And the cobble sections, that's where you have to go in the attack, because that's where you can pull out an advantage. On the Tom Macadam sections, there is a difficulty, you know, pulling a nice advantage out there. So, but there's certainly a little bit of more nervousness on the front of the bunch at the moment.
Michael Schär almost with them here. Look, here we go. Michael Schär is going to make it a trio at the front here. It wasn't far off this point, Sean, last year that we saw Tom Bonen just motor away from everybody.
Well, I think as we're coming to this, the point where if somebody's in really good shape, they can do that. Cancellara, for example, he's done it before. You know, around the 50 kilometres to go, he can do that. with the advantage for the two out front, and they have been out there for a long time. Stigmans and Heyman, they are going to pay for the efforts. Scar, of course, is coming across now, a fresher man, so he will be the one I think will push it on that bit more. But again, a three-man group out front, it's still a big ask for any of them to go anywhere near the finish. I think it's going to be looks very, very high, very unlikely that they will make it into the final 20-25 kilometres. And if there's action back in the bunch from some of the big affairs, well, then that gap will come down real quick.
Fabian Cancellara. He's a big lad, isn't he, Fabian Cancellara? There we are on his cyclocross machine here. Colnago cyclocross machine. I don't know what size frame it is. Must be a 60, I would imagine, or something similar. 59. Not the most graceful of riders. Who cares, as long as it works. That hurt his hand trying to grab that bottle. Gets another one. Doesn't want to slow down. Can see the advantage of pushing on here. He's a good old bet, this one, for getting a fair old way if he can. He's a super strong rider. Some riders just are better than others. Here's O'Grady. And we saw him at the front, now we see him at the back, Sean.
Yes, and we could see when he was getting in difficulty out front, it was pretty sure that he was starting to suffer, and I think we see the answer here that when he's not here to keep in contact with this group, it means that he's pretty much at the end of his day.
Edvald Boasson-Hagen pushing the pace along in the front there. This is an interesting move. Boasson-Hagen in the champions jersey of Norway here. And is that Van Avermaet just behind? Difficult to tell. Looks a bit like him. And this will force a little bit of reaction. Johan von Summerton, well, the pace goes out of it again, but once again, Stannard right up there in the British champions jersey as well for Sky. Fletcher for Vacan Soleil in here too, sitting alongside Stannard. Very interesting now. Everybody's a bit nervous. Fabian Cancellara continues to try and bridge the gap across. You can see the cyclocross set up there with the little levers on the middle of the bars. William Bonnet in this group here, trying to get away and across. Matti Breschel seems to be in this, and Ian Stannard is at the back. This is a great move by Stannard. And is that Elmiger? Yep. Martin Elmiger, just as I said, is at Elmiger. Sean points to Elmiger, the former Swiss champion riding for I Am Cycling, a very good rider. There we are. Guarnieri is the Astana rider. So Stannard, Bonnet, Guarnieri, Breschel and Elmiger. That's a smart move. Oh, Cancellara should be a little worried about some of those riders in there, I think. With 54 kilometers to go, Radio Shack will be whipped to the front if they have riders available to bring this one back. It's not very far, but even so, in a race like Paris-Roubaix, Sean, it's odd, isn't it? That's often the gap doesn't look as though it's very far, but it just grows out little by little by little. They don't tend to go away very fast, but they do just tend to pull out.
Yes, well, that is as you get more and more into the race, towards the end, the little gap of a couple of 100 meters, and I think we see a perfect picture of that last week in the Tour of Flanders when Cancellara went away. We had the two riders chasing, and then we had a group behind, and it looked like they were going to just swallow up the two chasers very, very quickly, but they never managed to do it. And that 10-15 seconds in advantage when everybody is really running on empty, it takes a long time, if ever, to close it down. That was the case last week, and when you're on the cobbled sections, you can see the guy out in front of you, or the group out in front of you. It looks like that they're no distance away, but just to bridge that gap as you get more into the final, more into the end of the race, well, it gets that much more difficult.
So quite a different race at the moment from last year. No Tom Bonen here, and Bonen rode off at this point. Martin Elmiger and Ian Stannard. William Bonnet, Guarnieri, and so forth will be back in the peloton again. Stegmans in the middle, running down the section of cobblestones here. Damian Gaudin can see them up ahead. This is a fine ride by Gaudin. He's trying to make that gap. 15 seconds he has to bridge over to these three men. Well, he's in very, very good form, Sean. He certainly has been. For this sort of event, he's a big, strong lad, isn't he?
Yes, he's powerful, and when you see him on the bike, the style, it doesn't look good, but he can get the power into the machine there and really push along, because to close down on the three out in front, he's doing a great ride there to bridge that gap. And as we've just talked about, when the gap is 30 seconds plus, it's a big ask for anybody to close down on three out in front. And of course with Scar joining up with the two out front, he's pushing it on, but Gaudin is making great inroads here and look like he's going to close down and get into this three-man group.
Still not a big gap, is it though? 33 seconds between the between the three leading men, Gert Stegmans, Michael Schaar and Matthew Heyman, and the main peloton. 33 seconds, and still, although we haven't seen much of it for the moment, as we watch Damian Gaudin churning away like some great enormous machine. Gosh, he makes Ian Stannard look like he's got massive souplesse, this man. 33 seconds. Radio Shack are doing a good job on the front. They've got one man there, but there's other teams contributing here, Sean, including Sky and Astana and Argos Shimano. It's not all just down to Radio Shack here, but even so, still good for Fabian Cancellara.
Yes, I think it's a good situation for Cancellara at the moment, with the race coming to not far off, outside the 50 kilometers to go mark, and the group out front, nothing to worry about, certainly no panic at all. And we could see Cancellara attack at any time from here on. He could decide just up the pace, pull some riders off the front of the peloton with him and ride away, because when he turns on the power on the cobble sections, there's not many riders in the group. But again, you have to be careful, because if you attack too early, well, then you can pay the price.
And here he is, look at him, right comes to the head of affairs now he's turning on the gas, as we said. Oh, this is stringing people out. Cancellara himself is now putting the pressure on. There's no good, and look at the gap he's caused behind. 30-odd riders have managed to come with it. Bernard Eisel on the right-hand side, our producer Vincent Renaud's choice for the outside winner today. Sylvain Chavanel comes straight up the middle of the crown of the road, not wanting to let Fabian Cancellara get his own way here. Thor Hushovd right at the front of affairs in the red and black of BMC. Brilliant to get back in there. Well done. Ian Stannard not so far behind either. Juan Antonio Fletcher up here. This is the selection being made, Sean.
This is the explosion being made.
Hey, look at that.
There's riders everywhere here. We can see, gaps of 2 and 3 bike lengths between the riders, and Cancellara, just looking so comfortable at the moment. He's just up the pace, but certainly not, giving it his 100%. And it's amazing when he, starts right on the front, the damage he can cause. And we've just seen the shot there. Riders in major difficulty trying to cling on here.
Fabian Cancellara just winds on the power. Here he is. Looks over his shoulder, doesn't look to be bothered in the slightest. I don't think he's put on the full gas yet, with Chavanel just behind him. Sinkeldam is the rider for Argos Shimano. He's going well, Sinkeldam. Ramon Sinkeldam. If you ever wanted a name to conjure with, moves across right in front of Bernard Eisel, though. You think he's looking around going, what the hell am I doing up here? And there he goes. Decided that that's the best thing to do. Cancellara on the left-hand side of the shot. I think Turgot has managed to keep in this little group as well. Lars Bohm is right behind Cancellara as well. Sinkeldam moves forward a little bit. Sylvain Chavanel thinking maybe this is the man to go with at the moment. Gaudin has almost made the gap with these two. Possibly a tactic, Sean. Gaudin get up there, Is there anything left in the tank to help Turgot if he arrives?
Well, whatever's left in the tank, it's going to be a really difficult one, because the advantage, down to 13 seconds at the moment. The up in pace back in the main group of Cancellara and the other riders who are taking it up, that is really causing difficulty, really killing off the breakaway. And it will be interesting now to see, will they continue on? There's going to be more and more of attacks, but we can see that group, it's the numbers have came down a lot in that group of Cancellara. They've loaned so many riders out the rear, but this is the time now where we'll see the attacks once again. There's a lot of riders going to say, well, this is the opportunity for us to try and get ahead, form a breakaway. Just under 50 kilometers to go. It's the time to start thinking of that, and we can see riders wanting to push on here.
Hushovd, Thor Hushovd, wanting to make the effort to get away with Jan van Summeren, former winner here 2 years ago, in his wheel at the moment. Michael Schaar is up the road. Goudin has joined this trio to make it a quartet. Good news then for Thor Hushovd if he gets there. Sinkeldam is taken back. And van Summeren going well. Hushovd is not going well now. Hushovd is slipped back into this group, maybe thinking it's a little bit early, Sean. Possibly. It seems to have gone back very quickly.
Yes, and sometimes the experienced riders, they put in an attack, a very short-lived one, and knock off because they feel that it's much too far from the finish. And Cancellara as well, to open the pace there for a moment. It's just to make some of the other riders nervous, and when you do that, the other riders will take it up and keep on pushing. And if you can cause that nervousness within the leading group and up front of the leading group, well then that all helps, because they actually do the job for you, because they keep the pace very high by attacking off the front of the group.
That's a good person to have at the front as well, is Nicky Terpstra. Terpstra now just winding the pace on with the little terrier Luca Paolini on his wheel here. It was my outside favourite for Flanders. If you can go well at Flanders, you can go well here, who knows. Jan van Summeren's the other man. Now round the outside comes one of the Blanco riders. The shorter riders. I don't think it's Lars Bohm, but you never know. Paolini and Terpstra meet up. This is getting a little bit hectic here. The action coming thick and fast now. And leading riders are going to be brought back by that big group. Somebody saying, do you think Cancellara's attacked a little early on Twitter? Well, he's not really attacked. He's just trying to make the selection. He's trying to whittle down people at the moment. "48 kilometers still remaining. On to the Mons-au-Pévelay, section 10. That just tells you there's another 10 sections of this cobblestone still to go. And we're not even to the real selection point. Yes, I think the Carrefour de l'Arbre is probably going to be the final selection point. But you never know in a race like this. We saw last year with Bonen just riding away. Good move by Terpstra. But nobody's really getting away at the moment, Sean, but it is really hectic.
Yes, the pace is really strong here at the moment, and there's a lot of riders pushing off the front of the group, and once you can keep the pace high, that will suit Cancellara, for example. If that is the case, well, he will just sit back there, leave it happen, leave the race go on as long as possible. So for some riders, for the big favourites, it is a good situation, and if there's a lot of rivalry between the teams where there are, as we can see, Bohm here just pushing on the. It's an easy one to control, because there's riders and teams chasing each other, and that just keeps the pace real high at the front end of the bunch, and that's what the likes of Cancellara and the other big favourites they need at the moment. It's when it slows down a lot and everybody starts there looking at each other and they attack, then that come back and there's another attack. That's when it's dangerous. You can get a group of 10, even 15 riders getting away, and that's what they cannot afford to do. When someone has a puncture.
Juan Antonio Flescher on the right-hand side of the road. Arvo, the cat 999 saying, spokesman, have you picked everyone for the win today? No, we're just telling you how open the field is. You try picking a winner if it isn't Cancellara. Fletcher, followed by Lars Bohm. We spoke to Juan Antonio Fletcher yesterday, and he seems quite bullish, I have to say. He looked pretty good in Flanders. Maybe this is his year, Sean. He's been second, he's been third, he's been, I think, fourth as well. He's just always been outside.
Yes, and you know, there has been times when he's very impressive, looking real strong, but just never managed to win this one. And the form he's got at the moment, I think, is a form that he's capable of winning this Paris-Roubaix. But again, it comes down to, you know, tactically you have to try and form a group and get away, because I think if they wait with Cancellara, it's going to be difficult to, match him in the final. But certainly Fletcher's the one who could follow Cancellara. He has done it before, and I think the form he's in at the moment, capable of doing it.
Still a very big group here, long, strung out group. Some very impressive names, very big riders here, and the pace has been set pretty high. Riders beginning to suffer terribly here out the back. That Sebastianino, I think, was beginning to suffer very good in Flanders last week. Terpstra looks strong, responding to things. I think it's Van Kuilsbroek, isn't it?
I think it's Stein.
It's Stein Vandenberg. It's who. Yeah, this is Sebastianino struggling to remain with them. And hanging in here as well, trying to get back on is Degenkolb. Nicky Terpstra in the Champions of the Netherlands jersey. Fletcher still out there. This is where the selection is being made. Sean, there's not much in the way of team tactics when you get to this point.
Well, it's first of all, it's all about, you know, feeling good, and with just over the 45 kilometers to go, if you still feel good, well, then you can do so much damage. And it looks like Omega Pharma Quick-Step are really pushing on here. Stein Vandenberg, and we can see also Nicky Terpstra there, very much to the fore, so they want to push it on. Are they going to try and, you know, just get these riders up the road, or is it a tactic for Sylvain Chavanel for a bit later on, get out in front, and then maybe Chavanel will try and come across? But it's definitely blown this group to pieces once again, as we can see. You know, a lot of riders losing contact, and Degenkolb there, I think he was more fighting to stay in that group than looking like to get back into it.
Yeah, well, maybe, yeah. This is Sebastianino. Oh, that's it. I've tried hanging in there as long as I can, and he just can't. Stein Vandenberg. Look at this way Fabian Cancellara has managed to sneak up into this select group here. Looks to me as though, although the sun's come out on it now, there's Sebastian Langeveld in there for Orica Green Edge. Terpstra for Omega Pharma Quick-Step, so two men for Omega Pharma Quick-Step. Maybe they can play the 1-2 on Cancellara, but look at the way it's all over the place. In Stannard now in this group that was chasing. This is Thor Hushovd. The gas is off here, Sean, by the look of it.
Yes, I think Hushovd looks like that in a bit of difficulty.
Rosenhagen too.
Rosenhagen also, and it's the moment where you have to, follow Cancellara, because if there's a group of, any more than 2 or 3 riders going away and Cancellara's in it, you certainly have to react, because if he starts riding up front with the quick-step riders, well, then this group could, pull away very, very quickly. So it looks like that the group we're seeing with Hushovd, Stannard, Rosenhagen. For me, I think you're just going through a difficult moment, suffering at this time.
It's a group of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Look as though they're going to come across to the Fabian Cancellara group here. 2 men from Omega Pharma Quick-Step in this front group. Well, they can continue pulling the pace along with Nicky Terpstra, but the heart must sink in their mouths when you see Fabian Cancellara here, because he's made that just had to wind it up and got across to the group there. Here's the chasing group. 2 men from Europcar, and I see Sylvain Chavanel in that group as well, although he's waiting for the cart for some reason, I think. Not quite sure why. Martin Weinens of Blanco looks over his shoulder. Nice to see the I Am Cycling jersey of Heinrich Hausler in here. Luca Paolini also in the group, I thought. Alexander Kristoff, my big outsider for a win in here. I don't see Björn Lerkermans though, Sean. That's a shame. If anybody's putting money on Lerkermans, like me. Didn't see him yet anyway. It's quite a big group then. Langeveld looking cool and calm. What will be the tactic here? Just roll along a little bit. They don't want too many people coming back. They've got enough gap. I think they realise that the men behind are just dropped off a little bit. There's a Sky jersey in here as well. Is that Eisel? Difficult to tell. 2 from Blanco. 1 from Katusha. Right at the back. That's Alexander Kristoff. 2 from Europcar, probably Godin and Turgot. As inside the top 10 section of cobbles they come, with Vandenberg pushing on. Now stringing them out a little more. This is another selection process as Langeveld goes with him. It's a case of last man standing here, Sean, at the moment. It's going to be, I think.
Yes, well, the tactic from Omega Car Quick Step, I'm surprised that they're pushing so much with Cancellara in this group. We did see Sylvain Chavanel, calling for the team car at the rear, so surprising to see them continuing on with their effort, that they did knock it off for a moment. And maybe Chavanel is not feeling good, and they have decided, to push on with Tepster out front. But it's a surprising tactic. At the moment they're starting to look, and maybe the news is only coming through.
Bernhard Eisel is the Sky Rider here, freed from the responsibilities of looking after anybody, with clearly Edvald Bosenhagen not on the form. Lars Bohm is in this group as well. Oh, and Turgot looks as though, I think if that is Turgot, he needs a rear wheel. Well, thankfully the pressure has eased off a little bit. Well, had eased off. Oh dear, oh dear. And Sebastian Turgot needing a rear wheel. Oh, this is disaster for Turgot.
Jean-René Bernadotte.
Yes.
And was he on the roadside, or he had to be on the roadside?
Had to be on the roadside.
Yes. That's the reason he stopped real quickly, because he just came to that point and he sees Jean-René Bernadotte, the general manager of the team, and stopped suddenly and just made a wheel change.
Stijn Vandenberg pushing on. I'll tell you what, Sebastian Langeveld's looking good, as is Bernhard Eisel here. Lars Bohm is in this group. We'll give you a full rundown in just a minute. Martin Weinens is now winding up the pace here, with Lars Bohm, his teammate, at the back. Lars Bohm, I tipped for a win last year, but didn't manage to get there. He was blown away by the power of Tom Bonen, as Damian Godin is looking behind him. Where is my teammate Sebastian Turgot? Can't afford to hang around though. If a couple of these riders really put the hammer down, won't make any difference where Turgot is. Godin's just going to have to keep with this group and go for it.
Yes, well, I think Godin is in the position where you just have to follow the attacks and just stay up front, and hopefully his teammate will get back in. There's not a lot you can do at the moment, and you just continue on where you are and try and stay in the front of this group, and see what happens a little bit further down the road.
This is Cancellara. Juan Antonio Fleischer in this group. 66 there is Luca Paolini. Wijnands and Langeveld pushing on here, with another couple of riders getting across. It's Stein Vandenberg is one of them. 124 there is Björn Leukemans. There is Leukemans. This is the chasing group with Hausler, Leukemans, now Turgot is in this group. There is Christophe. Oh, great riding from the Bretagne Schüler rider. Turiel, Aloy Turiel, the track rider. Sylvain Chavanel, he looked like he had a problem earlier, had his hand up for the car, takes a new bike. 39 kilometers to go, and Chavanel makes a bike change. Oh man, it's everybody for himself here. C'est la guerre. Sylvain Chavanel right up behind that bike, using that bike for every inch he possibly can to give him that tow. The old bottle comes out as Stein Vandenberg pushes on at the front. This is the head of the race at Pont Thibault. Pont Thibault. We still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sections to go. 3-star section, just under a kilometre left for Stein Vandenberg, and that dust is absolutely devastating for some of the riders behind. It must be really difficult, Sean, to keep any sort of contact with what, with what's actually going on.
Yes, well, it is a difficult one to keep control and to see exactly what is happening. Although at this moment, we haven't that many riders in the front, and you can recognise the riders pretty quickly. Earlier on the race, when there is a group of 50, 60 riders, when there's a lot of attacking off the front, then it can get a bit complicated, and to keep control who's going out in front, it's a bit more difficult. But here, the riders, they have the experience of that, and of course they should be able to see who's going out off the front of the group.
Here now is Zdeněk Štýbar is in this group as well, next to Fabian Cancellara, who doesn't look like he's riding super hard here. It doesn't look to me, Sean, as though Cancellara looks particularly happy.
Well, at the moment, he's in a group where they're going to start attacking him, and of course, if he starts to react and follow everybody immediately, well, then they will just keep on doing it. And all the riders in this leading group, before we had the two riders getting out in front, they will continue on to do that. So he's maybe bluffing at the moment, but with two out front, I think Cancellara, if he is anything like he was last week in the Forum, well, then when he goes in the attack a little bit later, because there's still 37 kilometers to go, there is sufficient amount of time. I feel that he will put in a big attack a bit further on, so he can afford to allow 2 or 3 riders pull a advantage of 35, 40 seconds, even a minute, and he can close down that very quickly if he's in the shape he was last weekend.
Extraordinary that he can do. Look, he's just turning over a bigger gear here. Flescher looks over his shoulder to see Nicky Terpstra come up, and Lars Bohm is in there. Luca Paolini's saying to the riders behind, come on, let's work together. He's allowed the other riders to come back up to him, just knocked off the gas a little bit, Luca Paolini, I think. I don't think he can go any faster, but he knows he can get a better advantage by working with other people. This is the group with Fabian Cancellara, Paolini at the back. Lars Bohm is in this group. Eisel trying to get it working. Fletcher, Terpstra. Welcome back. You'll be pleased to know there are no more breaks until after the arrival in the velodrome here in Roubaix. 15 seconds is the gap between Stein Vandenberg, Damien Goudin, Sepp van Mark and Sebastian Langeveld, and the two riders who are now chasing, Greg Van Avermaet and Juan Antonio Flescher. Filippo Pozzato's in this group along with Heinrich Hausler. This must be the 1, 2, 3, 4th group on the road now. Sebastian Turgot, Alexander Christophe is in here. Who else is in this group of note? Steve Chanel, the cyclocross rider. This is the front group on the road. Sepp van Mark is the Blanco rider in the blue and white and black vertical stripes. That is Sebastian Langeveld of Orica Green Edge, that lime green colouring on the jersey, looking very strong. I reckon he looks the strongest in this group. Damian Gouldin in the emerald green of Europcar, pedalling as per usual like a bag of spanners, but super strong. And behind him, just coming through to do his turn on the front, the enormous, colossal figure of Stan Vandenberg of the Omega Pharma Quick Step squad. There he is. Two men are now chasing at 14 seconds, and they are Juan Antonio Fletcher there in the blue and yellow and white of the colours of Fabian Cancellara and Greg Van Avermaet. And Van Avermaet is not really waiting. Look at this. Fabian Cancellara is off the pace here, and he's back with the car. Fabian Cancellara getting a little tiny bit of a handling from the car and not in great shape. I think it's over. I don't think he's into it. I don't know what you think, Sean, but that spells to me that he's not comfortable.
No, it's looking like that he is having a lot of discussion with the car. Is he just playing a little bit of bluff at the moment? But he's allowing too many riders to ride out the front of this group for my liking. Up to this moment he was sitting there and, you know, just allowing the race to happen. But when I see Fletcher and Van Avermaet riding away with 4 out in front and then the other 2, you know, getting out of this group, it's an interesting one. We will see, I think, real quickly if he is in difficulty, because he has to react now in the next number of kilometres. If he doesn't, well, then the race will be, you know, getting it too far away from him.
It's very unlike Fabian Cancellara to let riders ride away. Really very unlike him. He must be either supremely confident that he can shut down that gap or in trouble. Sepp van Mark. And as we were saying, just on the way into the finish line today, before we took our position here in the commentary booth, or the tribune here, Sepp van Mark, possibly not the absolutely most naturally talented rider in the world, but very clever.
Yes, I think he's proven that in a very short time, because he hasn't been, you know, in the pro ranks for a long time, and I think he is able to read the races quite well, and that is very important, because to get into the break at a good moment, and this one is certainly, you know, a real good one. Certainly at the point in the race to get into a 4-man breakaway, it was the perfect timing. Earlier on, you could say, well, some of them look pretty good, but, you know, that bit more further out in the race, so it's looking good. It's a good position to be in with 4 leaders with just 32.8 kilometres to the finish.
Well, maybe Cancellara was just supremely confident, because look, he gets on the front now, starting to try and string this one out there, but he's pulling Bernhard Eisel, Nicky Terpstra and Lars Bohm with him. This is the next group on the road chasing back with Sylvain Chavanel. This will be group 4, I think, on the road. Sylvain Chavanel, Sebastian Turgot. "35 seconds between the group of Chavanel there and the Cancellara group a little bit further up the road. There are essentially 4 groups now on the road we need to worry about. This is group number 1 with Damian Gouldin churning away at the pedals behind. A sort of Thomas Telford approach to riding. Huge steam engine of a man. Stair sticking in there. And Sepp van Mark, number 56 in the black and blue and white stripes of the very classy Blanco kit. Just adjusting those brakes, taking them off a little bit. Doesn't need to do anything with them. Number 66 is Luca Paolini. This is the next group back. 37 is Greg Van Avermaet. And Juan Antonio Fletcher is in this group as well. And interestingly, Zdeněk Štýbar here, former world cyclocross champion. World cyclocross champion in this group. Cancellara's group still doing the pulling along, but there's substantial gaps between some of these now, Sean.
Yes, I think the group of Cancellara is 20 seconds. It's not out of control at the moment, but Cancellara, it will be interesting to see as we get to the next section of cobbles. I think if Cancellara is feeling good, well then that's the time when we should see him just turning up the pace and really causing difficulty for the rest of the riders with him. And with the position out front, he has to do it at this moment, and the next section of cobbles, I think we will see what sort of shape Cancellara's in. If he's just playing bluff a little bit, or is he starting to feel a little bit under his best?
It's a very unusual situation for him. You don't often see him go back, let the gap go, and then eat it up. So as I said, after that spot of him going back to the team car and looking as though he was easing up, it's either he's very confident or he's just not feeling very good. One of the two. Sebastian Langeveld looking very confident, very calm, but maybe he's doing a little bit too much work too early with Stein Vandenberg coming up behind him. There's Sepp van Mark, Damian Goudan, Juan Antonio Fletcher arrives, Luca Paolini arrives. God, you just can't get rid of little Luca Paolini, can you? He's had such a long career. And Greg van Avermaet of BMC. Paolini at the back end, number 66. And now they're looking. Now they're talking to each other. As Lars Bohm is having trouble. And there goes Fabian Cancellara. Oh, well, question answer then maybe, Sean. A bit of poker being played.
Yes, I think you have to be real careful with Cancellara, because he plays a bit of bluff, and if he gets you on a section of cobbles and he is feeling good, well then it's so difficult to follow him inside the final 30 kilometers if he does go in the attack. And I think we're seeing the answer. It's the race is not over for Cancellara yet. He is not as suffering or not in big trouble as it looked like it could have been the case for a moment.
Well, that's the excitement of Paris-Roubaix. Oh, be careful. Yep, motorcycle pulling out the way, giving him a little bit of a tow. Not that he needs one. He's coming back to this group now. Fabian Cancellara, winner in Flanders so easily last week. He's having to work hard to get there, but he will get there, and they've eased up ahead. Still 30 kilometers to go. What will Fabian Cancellara do? I tell you, their hearts will sink in their boots or their cycling shoes when they see this man coming up, as they thought they distanced him a little bit. This is the great excitement of Paris-Roubaix and cycling in general. You never know what's going to happen. Sepp van Mark and Stein Vandenberg deciding they're going to push on here. They've got the word that the Fabs is coming up here. Makes the gap. Fabian Cancellara, what can you say about this man? Oh, that's put the hurry up for Zdeněk Štýbar. That's a very good race for him so far, Štýbar.
Yes, he's riding a great race here, because coming from cyclocross, he's concentrated on the road in the past, and to be up here in this company in a Paris-Roubaix, it's a real strong ride by Štýbar. And cyclocross, a 2-hour event, in this one, it's a big step up, but he's managed it quite well and done it very quickly.
Stein Vandenberg and Sepp van Mark have 10 seconds now over the group that's now just been joined by Fabian Cancellara. This is a smart move by these two. Stein Vandenberg's looked strong all day, and he's got Štýbar in the group behind. But Sepp van Mark has seen that, well, I can't compete with a rider like Fabian Cancellara. I'm just going to go while I can, hoping this group will ease up a little bit, thinking, well, we're not going to do any work now and take Cancellara any further forward.
Well, I think they would be aware that Cancellara was coming up, and a good tactic to just get out of that group, get that little bit of an advantage.
normality is resumed. Fabian Cancellara comes back into contention here. Sebastian Lagerfeld of Orica Green Edge in the blue and yellow and white. Right at the front here now in the black and red is Greg van Avermaet. Looking down to getting a gel down his throat is the powerful rider in emerald green of Damian Goudan, as Nicky Terpstra, the Netherlands national champion, comes across as well. That's a fine ride by Terpstra. Remember, Terpstra was pretty much up there last year as well, and has been, when he's on form, he's a very difficult rider to hold if he can ride away. These two are going well. That Van Mark's doing a little less perhaps than Stijn van den Berg. We don't know. We haven't seen him too much on camera. He's coming through to do his turn now as Goudan decides, I'm going to go. Well, he knows he can't stick with Fabian Cancellara in the long run, so he's going to have a go now.
Yes, but it's going to be difficult for him to pull the advantage out here, and I think the effort you have to make here on your own, you just pay for that a bit later. For everybody here in the group of Cancellara, I think you should just line up, get in his wheel and try and follow him, because when we come to the next section of cobbles, which is at 27 kilometres, so we're coming to that now. 1.3 kilometres. Will Cancellara go here, or will he just, play on for a bit longer and wait? Because 26.8 kilometres to finish. There is still a lot of very difficult sections left in this race.
Sits up. They're all sitting up just a little bit. 56.7 kilometres still to run. The next section of cobblestones will be Bourgeot, Wannerheim, which these two are now on. There we are. Bourgeot, 1,200 metres of cobblestones, and Sub Van Mark he's playing a crafty game here. Good ride by these two. 26 kilometres to go and 30 seconds the gap back to Cancellara. An extra 30 seconds back to the group of Chavanel. It's not over by any means, even for that third group on the road, if this group continue to sort of just wheel along here.
Yes, and it all depends on what the group of Chavanel, what they're feeling, how they're feeling. I think there's a lot of riders, starting to feel tired at this moment, because otherwise they'd not be back there in that group. And as we talked about earlier, I think a 30-second advantage on this one. If you're feeling good, you can close it down very quickly, but you're starting to suffer big time, well then the gap will only go out, and I don't think it will really slow down that much. As we can see, Fletcher's pushing on here on this section, and I think the group of Chavanel will just lose time from here on in.
Is that the right thing to be doing, pushing on at this point? Sean, for Juan Antonio Fletcher, we've seen him do this in the past. He's done this before with Sky, he's done it with Rabobank. He pushes on at about this point and just gets swamped towards the end.
Yes, and when you have a rider like Cancellara, for example, then you have to be real careful. The effort you put in, if he goes in the attack when you do your big effort, very difficult to match him and to follow him. So you have to be careful. But again, as we just talked about, the group behind, you don't want that group joining up, because then the chasing group gets very, very big. So but Fletcher, we have seen him in the past, sometimes he makes the effort maybe when he should be just playing the waiting game and wait for the Cancellara attack possibly.
This is the Cancellara group, and I don't think that the chasing group behind this is that far down now. The one, actually, Pozzanto's in that group as well, as Fletcher continues to pull this second group on the road along with Zdeněk Štýbar, Nicky Terpstra, Goudan, Cancellara, Van Avermaet, Luca Paolini, Lagerfeld still in that group, and Stijn van den Berg looks across to Van Mark as he comes and does a turn on the front. I think possibly doing maybe one shorter turns, but pressure now, increasing the pressure here. He's been in very good form. He was good last weekend in Flanders, coming back from the last 30 kilometres. And Goudan's just hanging up. Paolini with a puncture. Luca Paolini with a puncture. And this is this is going to be very, very, very interesting as they come towards the last section. Still 7 sections of cobblestones to go, and nothing looks to be hugely inspired within this group of Cancellara. And can you blame him as Damien Goudin decides that if everybody else is going to just hang around, I've only got one option, and that's to go hard, as Nicky Terpstra thinks that's a good idea to go too. I think they're more worried about Terpstra than they would be about Goudin. Langeveld looks strong in that group to me, though, Sean. He just sits there and he's just pedaling and responds to things quite well.
Yes.
Certainly podium material by the look of it there.
Yes, well, he's looking comfortable at the moment, but again, some riders, they can look, pretty comfortable, and they can be still hiding, the suffering is behind that.
Yes.
So I think, the cobble sections to come, and if there's a real strong attack from the likes of Cancellara, well, then we will see very quickly, the ones in this group, Terpstra, Cancellara, we will see who is capable of doing it. And the question is Cancellara capable of doing it? He's following it here, riding a little bit on the front. Is he not in the shape that we were expecting to be in today, or the shape he had last week in the Tour of Flanders? Because this gap, is 35 seconds, but again, 23.8 kilometers to finish. There's a long road to the Velodrome and Roubaix, and there's a lot of cobblestone sections all the time. And if Cancellara is in the form which he has shown in the past, well then, he can certainly close this gap down. But the big question is, what way is he feeling?
Over the section of cobblestones known as Champagne de Pévelay, and the next big and probably the crucial section here coming up. Carrefour de l'Arbre, with 17.5 kilometers to go. They'll finish going over this short section of Champagne de Pévelay, and then into Carrefour de l'Arbre as Fabian Cancellara gets to the front and turns on the gas, with Stybar responding. Good riding by the Czech to stick on the wheel of Fabian Cancellara, but look at everybody else, Sean. Bang, there they go. Greg van Avermaet chasing for all he's worth to get on the wheel of Zdeněk Stybar. What a magnificent bit of poker then by Fabian Cancellara. It's not over till it's over, though. He's made the attack, but has he got it in the tank? He may still have the power, but does he have everything else? Terpstra not able to respond. Langeveld coming past. Stybar is stuck with him. Great riding by the Czech. Now 2 lead riders, Seb van Mark and Stijn Vandenberg. And behind them now, the 2 riders, Fabian Cancellara and Zdeněk Stybar, and Greg van Avermaet can't stay with that pace at all. Well, Stybar must be having kittens now, thinking, I can't believe that. I can't believe I've stayed there.
Well, it must be an experience for Stybar, because road racing, he hasn't come from a road racing background, and to be up here in this Paris-Roubaix in the final and be able to match Cancellara, that is a big performance. And he's going to sit here now. He's not going to move off the wheel of Cancellara, because he have Vandenberg up the road, and it's an interesting one. Omega Pharma Quick Step will have 2 riders out in front, but again, Cancellara, when he will start to up the pace again on the next section of cobbles, well, it's going to be difficult to follow. But Stybar, looking very, very impressive at the moment, because when you see Van Avermaet not able to follow, that tells you how fast and how much he pushed on the pace there.
Let's not forget, bike handling skills may be exemplary for Stybar, the Czech rider, but cyclocross races are 1 hour and 1 lap, or a little bit longer. They're not 202 kilometers of Paris-Roubaix, so impressive. And interestingly, this is interesting because there seems to be a little bit of lack of pace now from Stein Vandenberg. He'll have known that Stibar is with Cancellara now, and Sepp van Mark comes to the front, but he seems to be a little bit less aggressive here, Sean.
Well, maybe he's starting to feel also that the tiredness starting to, pay, and feeling that. And you also have to make the calculation, I suppose. Still over 20 kilometres to go. Still a number of sections of cobbles to be negotiated. They know the route so well. All the riders have been out here to look at the cobble sections in the last number of days. And the difficult ones to come, they'll be saying, well, I better knock it off a little bit here just to have a bit more for the next section of cobblestones ahead.
Cancellara, 13 seconds to make up on the riders in front, and Stibar of Omega Pharma Quickstep able to just sit there in his wheel at the moment. You never know how much will Cancellara leave on the road. He opened up a whopping, nearly 1 minute and 15 seconds in the last 13k of the Tour of Flanders, but that's a different race. It's a different race completely. Always, every race is different, of course, but there's no hills here to contend with. I've been hiding very well, though. Terrific bit of poker by Cancellara, going back to the car, letting the gap go out, and he's just hopped from one to another, Sean. He's been superb.
Yes, it's amazing how guys can do that. You can, so cool, allowing groups to ride up the road and not panic at all, and play the poker so well. Calling the car, talking with the team car. I think a lot of the riders were starting to think, well, is Cancellara not on a good day? Is he starting to suffer? That would have been certainly going through a lot of the riders that are up there in that group with him. But to keep that coolness, that is where the big champions come out, and they can do that at a real important point of the race.
Cancellara reaches for gel, and Stan Vandenberg, I think, definitely has knocked the pace off. You can see that Stibar is behind. Question is, can they, between them, and I think Sepp van Mark's going to be the smart one and benefit by doing less. Can they both work over Fabian Cancellara here with less than 20 kilometres to go? Here we go. Section 5. This is Champain-de-Pévelay, and Cancellara's made the gap here. I'm sure that he's saving the attack, Sean, for Carrefour de l'Arbre, which will come at 17.5 kilometres, because Stein Vandenberg's decided, look, put the hammer down again here and just keep it strung out so Cancellara can't attack us.
Yes, well, I think when you come to a section of cobblestones, the rider on the front will automatically keep the pace quite high. Cancellara, just after making contact, he will just follow the wheel of Sepp van Mark for the moment and just recover a bit. We see him having an energy gel or an energy bar just as he was about to make contact, and Carrefour d'Arbre, that is the one I think where Cancellara will try something, because he has got to do something here. He cannot just go to the finish with these riders. He's going to try and ride everybody up his wheel. That way he's sure to come into Roubaix on your own, it's the way to do it. And Cancellara, of course, in the sprint, Stibar, for example, he's quite a good sprinter, so it will be interesting to see the riders up here in front with Cancellara. Can anybody follow him when he does make this big attack? And there's certainly going to be one of them, and I think Carrefour d'Arbre is a long section, and it's a perfect opportunity for a rider like Cancellara to do it.
Looking comfortable again now as Van Mark leads them out of section 5, Champain-de-Pévelay. Chain, but we always get this shot at some point, the chain bouncing around all over the shop. And Nick Stibar is definitely sort of bouncing around like a pea on a drum at the moment, but won't bother him too much. Cancellara looking super solid. Sepp van Mark at the front of this quartet of riders. Here are the chasing group with Sylvain Chavanel, Lars Bohm riding, another great cyclocross rider and former world champion, riding on the left-hand side of your shot in the Blanco kit, the white helmet, just passing by the hot air balloon in your background there. Still churning away in this chasing group is Damien Gaudin. Fine ride by him. And Antonio Fletcher also in the chasing group. They are at 38 seconds back now. 1:08 back for the group of Chavanel, Eisel, Lars Bohm, Winans is in there. Christophe, Luca Paolini is back in there, having had a puncture, and Steve Chenel. Four riders, Stibar, Vandenberg, Cancellara and Van Mark take a little bit of time to get together, and smart. Stan Vandenberg sees Fabian Cancellara reaching in for an energy gel. Puts on the pace a little bit. Keep the pressure on the man from Switzerland. Sebastian Langeveld and Damien Gaudin losing a little ground here on the riders in front. Greg Van Avermaet, Juan Antonio Flecha and Nicky Terpstra at 33 seconds now. It's a fine ride by Gaudin, but as you were saying, Sean, I mean, Langeveld looked exceptionally comfortable, but not there now.
No, and you know, some riders they look quite comfortable, but it's really when the pace is up big time, that's when you see they start to lose contact, and it looks like Langeveld is not feeling that good, because hanging on the rear end of that group, if he was in good shape, and I think anybody that was really feeling good would have tried to follow Cancellara, but it's easier said than done, and Stuyber was the only one had the power to do that.
Here we go, Café de l'Arbre. And Stein Vandenberg is now beginning to suffer a little bit. He's got about 2 bike lengths gap. Sepp van Mark keeps the pressure on, but Cancellara just waiting. Remember, the last significant cobbled section comes 8 kilometers from the end. There's a little tiny one at the end, but it's all been put in the middle of town almost. Sepp van Mark for Blanco. Oh, there's a fall. Who's the faller? Is that Vandenberg? Yes. Vandenberg. Stein Vandenberg, as he hit it, I bet he hits a fan. Yes, he does. Gives a fan. Oh! No, that is going to hurt. Ow, 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 ow. I hope his hips are okay there. That is very painful. Riding on the side of the road and a fan just standing out a little bit. So 4 and now 3. Oh, that's huge shame for Stein Vandenberg, who is chasing very hard to try and get back on this trio. Van Mark, who played it a little bit cute and stayed behind Vandenberg most of the time, is now riding on the centre of the cobbles with Fabian Cancellara on the right-hand side of your screen. He's still not managed to shed. Zdeněk Štibar, the Czech rider. This is so hard, this section. And this is where the final selection could be made. Van Mark on the right-hand side of your screen. Cancellara and Štibar on the left-hand side. And this is where, I think it's the next corner actually, is it not? The next left-hander where Thor Hushovd fell a few years ago.
Yes, it was certainly on Carrefour that...
I think it's this corner coming up actually. He just,
yes.
The wheel slid away from him. Everybody around, that's good. And you can see why it's difficult, it's narrow. Right, everybody crowds in here. And there goes Cancellara. He sees the opportunity to put the hammer down. Get around Van Mark and go for it. Stibar's not letting him go. Oh, Van Mark will be chewing the handlebars any second now. Well done. Well responded, both of those men. A little bit of a test by Fabian Cancellara. Wants to keep the pace going. Impressive by both the men who are with Cancellara here to remain with him.
Yes, and Stuber just stuck to the wheel of Cancellara. You know, we could see there when Cancellara just passed by Seb Van Mark, he almost touched elbows, and maybe did touch elbow, and Stuyber is just going to try and do that, stay in the wheel of Cancellara and try and follow. But Seb Van Mark is very impressive here. He's the one who's pushing on. It looked like Cancellara was really going to turn it on, but was that a little bit of a test? And now we hang a right here and then immediately left, and I think that is the section. If Cancellara has got it, touch another spectator.
Oh no! Come on, let's have a look what happens here.
Yeah.
Oh! No, I think did he get clipped on the left-hand side and then...
No, I think a spectator just put his hand out and he touched up a Stuyber, and he did really well to hold upright.
Cyclocross chaining coming in here, and Zdeněk Stybar's got to ride as hard as he possibly can now. Oh, this is awful for Zdeněk Stybar. You can see him almost shaking his head as Cancellara continues on his way with Seb Van Mark behind him, and Stybar, who's used that back wheel of Cancellara as both shelter and something to aim at. Quacked by a spectator on the side of the road and zipping across the other side. This is absolutely awful for Zdeněk Stybar, and he's losing ground hand over fist here now, Sean.
Yes, with Cancellara riding in the front, of course, we've seen as recent as last week, and it's going to be very difficult for Stybar to get back here. I don't think he will make it, because we can see Cancellara is just after doing a pull now. Seb Van Mark takes over here, so you know it's 2 against 1, and at this point it's highly unlikely that he will make it back to the 2 in front.
That is the most appalling luck.
But from the Paris-Roubaix.
It's absolutely, but from the one man who's sat on the wheel and been able to respond to Cancellara's upping in pace.
As you can see, it's a race where it's so much dangerous here. You try and ride on the side, the spectators are there, you know, standing out, and all you need is a spectator to look, you know, the other direction. And we see with Vandenberg, well, he, you know, fell very heavily, and here over race ready, he got back on his bike, so that is a good news. But for Stuybar, just that little touch, and you know, when you get to this point of the race, you want to, you know, to ride in the most easiest section of the cobbles, and that's what he was trying to do, to try and get on the edge. But unfortunately, one of the spectators just put his hand out there and touched him, and it was amazing that he stayed upright. Terrific save by Zdeněk Stybar, but question is he got anything in the tank to come back at this? And if he has, what then? 13 seconds separates Seb Van Mark and Fabian Cancellara from Stybar. Meanwhile, at 39 seconds now, chasing Terpstra, Godin, Fletcher, Langeveld, Van Avermaet, and the next group down at 1:32. And there they are on the road. This is the Godin, Van Avermaet, Fletcher, Langeveld group. Oh, what terrible luck for Zdeněk Stybar. This is the next group down with Filippo Pozzato and Stein Vandenberg looking a little battered at the back here. Lars Bohm sitting ahead of Pozzato in the white helmet there. Alexander Kristoff in this group. And Luca Paolini, so 2 riders from Katusha sitting in this group. And they're a long way down now. And Thomas Chavanel also in here. Oh, who is this? Is this Stybar? Oh, not again. No. Oh, he's chasing so hard, and just keeping it together. Come on, Zdeněk, come on. All we need is one friendly neutral service motorcycle to just slow up a little bit so he can get a lift. But I fear it's not going to be for the man who looked the most likely to be able to stick with this man Cancellara all the way. I don't think there's no way back for Stybar at this moment. 21 seconds, against the two riders up front, and Seb van Mark still continuing to ride on the front with Cancellara. We can see Stybar really pushing the limits out there on that corner. Was lucky once again that he did not run off road. Interesting now to see will Cancellara just ride on to the finish. If it comes down to a sprint, Van Mark, he isn't a great sprinter. Against the Cancellara, I think he has a chance, but against the Stybar, if he came to the finish here on the velodrome, I think he would be a much bigger problem for Cancellara.
Yeah, I'm absolutely certain of that as well, Sean. Even puffing and blowing a little bit here, Fabian Cancellara, having fallen twice this week. Lots of questions about whether he had the ability, whether he had the form. He had the form, but just knocked off by injury. But, well, you know what? I hope the spectator at the side of the road watches this replay year after year and thinks what he did to Zadnik Stybar's chances. It's a long way back for Stybar, but there's still the chance, Sean, we don't know, of maybe a podium or coming in at least in the top 10.
Yes, well, a podium is possible, and I think he is probably thinking of that at the moment. He's fighting here, giving it his all, and I reckon thinking of that third position on the podium. But again, he still has over 10 kilometers to go. The chasing group, if they have got any energy left, numbers are very important at this moment, so he could have difficulty holding off that chasing group with Antonio Fletcher.
Stybar now 32 seconds, 20 seconds ahead of the Fletcher group. And Sepp van Mark takes his turn on the front. Somebody writing in on Twitter saying that Stybar was hit in the face by somebody with a camera sticking it out, and that chucked him across the road. Question at the end saying barriers. It's a very difficult one, that one. It's very difficult to barrier an entire race like this on the cobbled sections. Van Mark's played a great game so far. Sean, we've got under 10 kilometers to go, but it is never over until it is over. We have one more significant section of cobbles to go at 8k at Chem, but as I say, it's never over till it's over. Either one of these two riders could suffer a mechanical or have the same ill fate as Stybar.
Yes, well, we've seen it in the past, actually, on this section of Hem, where there is a Tar Macadam section on the left-hand side, and we will see the riders, going on to that to get the, the easiest ride possible. And we see in the past, I think it was in 1983, actually, Henny Kuiper was out in front, and he was hopping from left to right to try and get the easiest way across the section at Hem, and had a rear puncture, but had enough of an advantage to make a bike change, make a wheel change, and go on to win the race. So as you say, it's never over, and certainly in a Paris-Roubaix with this section at Hem to come, it's a worrying moment. And as a rider, when you're out in front, you're always thinking a little bit about that, and you're always thinking, I make sure I get the right line and do not take the risk of having a mechanical at this moment.
We're approaching the final section of cobblestones that has any significance. There's a tiny, tiny section in the town itself, only 1 kilometer from the Roubaix velodrome, 1.5 laps when they get there. Fabian Cancellara had the most brilliant Tour de Flanders victory last week. There's now 47 seconds of advantage over Zadnik Stybar, but he still has Sepp van Mark with him. Van Mark's going to take a few less turns now, and you can see the head is bobbing around for Sepp van Mark a little bit now. And he must know he's in the position of his life at the moment with Fabian Cancellara, the man to beat here at Paris-Roubaix. He's looking over his shoulder, hoping that he will come through and do a turn. Maybe Sepp van Mark will do one more, but this is the final section of cobblestones. He's having a word with Sepp van Mark.
It ain't going to happen.
No.
Seb Van Mark, I think, will just follow the wheel of Cancellara and try and get through the cobble sections. But here we go. He's going to take it up, and it is a one where it's surprising to see him doing that. I would thought he would just sit in the wheel of Cancellara, try and get through this section at him, because as you said, David, this is the chance of his life to get to the finish with Cancellara and possibly win this Paris-Roubaix.
Seb Van Mark is pushing on here. I'm not quite sure why, but he is. They've got enough of a gap over Zdeněk Štýbar and the rest of the riders not for Seb Van Mark to have not to do this. But Cancellara just seems to have knocked it off just a little bit, sitting in the wheel. Perfect position for him, and Van Mark, well, very surprising, as you say, Sean, but who knows what goes through somebody's mind here. Maybe he feels it's the only way he can keep his momentum going, keep himself fired up for this. And this is why they jump from side to side. You can see you've got these tarmac sections on either side, and as Sean was saying, Henny Kuiper going from one side to the other, and this is a twisting section as well. A lot of them are very straight, but this one at Hem isn't. And you can just flick from side to side, and thankfully all the fans are out of the way on this one. This is the chasing group of Terpstra, Godin, Van Avermaet, Langeveld, Fletcher. Štýbar is just ahead of them, 20 seconds. Impressive ride by Seb Van Mark. Super impressive ride by Fabian Cancellara. Played the bluff, went back to the car. So confident that there were 2 or 3 groups on the road. In fact, at one time he was in group 4, Sean.
Yes, he was looking to be in difficulty, but again it was just a bluff all the time, and there was a number of groups up the road, but the advantage was never anything great that it could cause a problem. And of course, when we see him up the pace there, he just came through groups very quickly. I think there was well under a minute between all those groups, and just closed it down very, very quickly. It looks like at the moment Cancellara seems to be suffering a bit, but again he is such a good bluffer, and he's done it already today. And of course the team directors will see what's happening here, because they all have got the TV in the car, so they will be relaying the information to the rider via the earpiece, via the radio. As we can see, Cancellara is the one who takes it up here. I was expecting Cancellara to maybe try something here, but does he feel confident enough that he can take this one in a sprint? Because as I said, I think it's a much better situation for Cancellara with Van Mark than it would have been with Štýbar in a 2-up or a 3-up sprint.
They have now a minute in hand of Zdeněk Štýbar, the Czech rider who got walloped apparently with a camera. He's still chasing like crazy, and he is on that final section in Hem now. What a dreadful time for Zdeněk Štýbar. There were 2 riders here of the biggest race day of their lives. Seb Van Mark and Zdeněk Štýbar, with the greatest of the Cobble Classics riders for this year, Fabian Cancellara, and one of the greatest of all time, both in with a shout of doing something here, and one of them wiped out by a spectator who either couldn't look where he was going, facing the wrong way, or just didn't have enough respect, frankly. Oh, look at this. Štýbar has been joined by Juan Antonio Fletcher. And now Štýbar has another wheel he can chase here. Oh, it's no good flicking your elbow, Juan Antonio. You must realize, poor man has been dropped from the other 2. He ain't going to come through and give you one turn. Have a look over the shoulder from Fabian Cancellara at the inside, almost inside the last 5 kilometers. That's where we are. That is the velodrome in Roubaix.
I love Roubaix. For some and not for others.
Absolutely. You've always said, Sean, isn't it, when people ask you, this is the most beautiful race to win and the least beautiful to ride.
Yes, and of course, when you're performing well, you enjoy the race, but if you if you have a difficult day, through mechanic or not in good form, well then it's a horrible race to ride.
Van Mark, the biggest win of his career so far to date would have been, was it, I don't know whether it was Het Neusplat by that time, but Het Volk. I think it was probably in Het Neusplat. No mean race in itself. And Zuidendijk Stibar is back in this group.
Yes, and of course Seb Van Mark, did he arrive in the sprint with Tom Bone and actually beat Tom Bone?
He did.
So, you know, after a very long classic, a very difficult classic, you know, he can put up a good sprint, and that'll be an interesting one here on the velodrome in Roubaix. How much I think our two men in front have left in the tank, and that's always the situation at the end of the big classics, which, you know, are 255, 260 kilometers.
Two men out ahead. Seb Van Mark has within his sights the biggest win of his career by a long, long way. Fabian Cancellara has the ability. Here he goes. He's going to the attack. Has the ability to go for a third. Oh, he's going to try and break Seb Van Mark. Well responded by Van Mark. He's still got to stick with him. And Seb Van Mark. Already they're playing with 4 kilometers to go. Cancellara tries to break him. Sees he's looking down at the bars. Flicks the elbow for him to come through. Oh, sneaky, sneaky. That was sneaky. You flick the elbow for me to come through, I'll come through at 3 times the speed you expect me to. Van Mark now taking that break off the back, making sure that he's got plenty, nothing's going to hold him back. Well responded to by Seb Van Mark. A little flick of the elbow by Cancellara. You don't think that's going to work, do you? Maybe. He's just going to roll through. Oh. That's it. Go through very slowly, Seb. Block his way for sprinting again. Seb Van Mark has this biggest win of his career in his sights. Fabian Cancellara has another victory possibly here. Would make it 3. The man with the biggest record, another cyclocross rider. So we were talking about Stibar earlier, Roger de Vlaming. 4 wins. Stibar in this group, and Fletcher is towing them along. And will it be another podium for Fletcher? Who knows? Langeveld back in this group, and they're playing around for 3rd here. Cancellara loosening his legs up as Van Mark does another turn here on the front. I fear he's going to get jumped again, Sean, didn't you?
Well,
possible,
but the opportunities to go in the attack, we did see when Cancellara went in the attack, it's a little bit uphill there, and it does hurt a lot at this point in the race, and it is certainly, you know, the moment to try something, and you know, Van Mark did real well to, you know, cling onto the wheel of Cancellara there. Cancellara, as I said, you know, he is not confident for the sprint, otherwise he would probably continue riding on here and just take it down to a sprint, but you know, going in the attack, he is concerned about Seb Van Mark for the final sprint on the velodrome here.
There's looking at each other going on here. Fabian Cancellara and Seb Van Mark cagily having a little look. Van Mark gets into the slipstream of Fabian Cancellara. Two kilometers to go, and the elbow is flicked out by Cancellara again for Van Mark to come through. Looks behind him, still wants to just stay in that wheel there. Cancellara is going to play it. Well, he doesn't want to do all the work at the front here. Wants Van Mark to do something. Van Mark now doing a little bit of on-bike stretching. Cancellara's nervous, definitely nervous.
Yes, well, it's a Paris-Roubaix. You're with a rider who is, strong in the sprint, and Cancellara, we know he's not the greatest sprinters, but at the end of a big classic, well, then it's all about how much energy you've got left, and Seb Van Mark is not going to take it up anymore. He's just going to follow Cancellara, and he's the best position. Make the rider go all the way into the track and continue on, and you have to be in second position with a two-man sprint. If you can get a guy to lead you out onto the track, well, it is the best way, and surprised that Van Mark is taking it up here.
He doesn't want to be in second spot on the cobbles. That's the issue here. He didn't want to in Hem, he doesn't want to here. It's only a short section in the centre of town. He's playing a very dangerous game now, I think, Seb Van Mark, though. Because they're coming into the final kilometre. And who's going to get the line in through the corner here? They're going to slow right down. Cancellara is playing track games with Seb Van Mark. Seb Van Mark has let him just roll through on the outside of the bend again. And Cancellara fears this. They're going to be with us very, very shortly. Running in towards the velodrome, and Cancellara does not want to give an inch to Seb Van Mark. Here they go. Van Mark within a sniff of the greatest day of his life, and it's ending up in a track sprint. They're right up on the banking, and Cancellara wants to hold him. Oh, it's like the World Cup. Oh, I'm not sure that's the position that Van Mark wants to be. Is he going to ride up the banking? Who'd have thought? Yes, he is. He's going to get in behind Cancellara if he can. Nope. The bell for the two men who've animated the last 20 kilometres of here, along with an honourable mention for Zdeněk Štýbar, cruelly taken out of this trio. Van Mark looks over his shoulder. Cancellara's in the best position at the moment. He's been in this position before, back with Magnus Backstedt won in 2004, still riding for Fassa Bortolo. I think Van Mark is not in the best position here. Cancellara looking pensive, getting on those drops. Van Mark's going to have to lead this sprint out. Just winding it up a little bit now. Cancellara still got it in the tank. Van Mark is going to get jumped. Ride him up the velodrome. That's it. Van Mark goes for it. He's out of the saddle, but unfortunately Cancellara looks in the better position at the moment. He's coming around the outside. Seb Van Mark is beaten to the line by Fabian Cancellara, who takes his third win. What a fabulous finish. And they go over the top of the chasing riders. Magnificent win, and Cancellara manipulated the situation to get into the better position for the sprint than Seb Van Mark. What a great finish. This is the race for third. It's a drag race to the end. It looks like Nicky Terpstra takes third from Greg Van Avermaet, and then Damian Gouldin. Zdeněk Štýbar is with us now underneath our commentary point. Then Sebastian Langeveld. Fabian Cancellara. Well, I think that really has genuinely taken it out of him, Sean.
Well, I think it's a relief, much more than anything else. And, with Van Mark, I think he was concerned, and you would be in the end of the classic. You're always worried about the rider. He has that little bit more left, but we could see that Cancellara was the one who had the bit more energy left. And I think Seb Van Mark, we could see him. He was stretching on the bike there in the last number of kilometres. He was really suffering and starting, to feel that the tiredness was certainly there. But it's just that little bit more in the end, and that's the way you can win. The little bit more energy, you can win in a sprint. And I don't think there was anything between the two riders. Sprint-wise, I think they were pretty well matched. It was just that Cancellara had a little bit more power left.
Fabian Cancellara takes a third Paris-Roubaix. Can hardly walk. By a bike length over Sepp van Mark. Twice fallen this week, once at Cheldepress and then 2 days ago out training and wrecking the cobblestones. And Fabian Cancellara having a real ding-dong battle at the end with Sepp van Mark taking the win. But a fine ride by van Mark. He played it cannily, got there in the end, and just about a bike length only. This is the sprint for third, coming up in a second. Nicky Terpstra, Van Avermaet and Damian Gouldin. What a race. That's a really fantastic Paris-Roubaix this year. Fine ride by Stibar, fine ride by Sepp van Mark. Finney is coming in now. Looks like Rollins. Fine weather greeting Paris-Roubaix. Great for everybody who gets to the end of this race. It's terrific. Yeah, nice to see Netap Endure up there as well. So the win goes to Fabian Cancellara. Sepp van Mark takes second from Nicky Terpstra. Greg Van Avermaet, Damian Gouldin. Sixth for Zdeněk Štýbar in the end. Sebastian Langeveld. Seventh. Fletcher eighth. Alexander Kristoff ninth. Turgo 10th this year. Magnificent finish. That was a really good finish. And Van Mark so close, so close. Fabian Cancellara adds another Paris-Roubaix to his tally. First one back in 2006. He'd been in the bunch sprint, the group sprint, when Magnus Backstedt won in 2004. Along with Roger Hammond, Tristan Hoffman, and Magnus, of course, himself. Won in 2006 and again in 2010. 2011, he was the big favourite once more. Everybody watched him and he wasn't allowed to get away whatsoever. And Jan van Sommeren went away and won by himself. He wouldn't chase. Tom Bonen not here this year, but who could bet it against Fab anyway. Fantastic win in Flanders last weekend, but I think a little bit tired and a little bit sore from two falls this week. One in another race, Cheldepress, and one in the recce for Paris-Roubaix, but has still pulled off a third victory and now goes into one of in position as one of the great Paris-Roubaix riders, Sean.
Yes, well, I think today's performance, it was so cool at the moment out there when it was a very decisive moment. There was a lot of tactics being played and he just played it so cool, and that is, the real big champions, they can do that. Of course, you have to be able to, produce the results as well, but, the way he did it today, I think it proves that he is, he's the big rider of the classics, and when he's on form, he's, so difficult to beat. But, chapeau to Sepp van Mark. He put up a great performance, and when you see 254 kilometers, 44 average, 5 hours 45 time on the bike there, it's a demanding day, and we could see Cancellara there at the finish. He was really at the end of his energies, and but he's got the win, and that's what counts.
If that is official, Sean, if it's a 44 kilometre per hour average over this 202 kilometres, I think I'm right in saying that is the second fastest Paris-Roubaix of all time, I would imagine. I think the fastest ride ever was by Peter Post in 1964, and that was much longer, 265 kilometers in length, 45.129 kilometers an hour. Was the ride, and if that's official, that's the second fastest Paris-Roubaix of all time.
Yes, well, when you see the average in the earlier part of the race, I'm not surprised that it is a very high average, but again, it is exceptionally high. And when you look back, Peter Post's time is up there with many years. I don't think the sections are covered or anything like we have at this moment, and certainly today. So it's been a real fast race today, and I think it's marked a lot of riders. We could see a lot of very tired riders in that final 25-30 kilometers.
Well, you just had to watch the chasing riders, even those big favourites, Flescher, Terpstra, very tired. Lots of riders still coming in, pleased to finish. I mean, riders who aren't challenging for the win, Sean. It's a big thing. It's a big thing to even get here if it's your first or second time.
Yes, and
or any time.
As we see a group of about 12-15 riders coming in there at the moment. There's an Escatel rider on the front. So for the team of Escatel, they did talk in the press. If they had one finisher, they would be very happy, and it looks like that's happening for them down on the track at the moment.
That is the Roubaix Velodrome, and the winners will soon be presented. Michael Sharp just coming in this group, having been on the attack earlier on. Gutrovic, I think, in this group as well, has just come through over the line. And Tamoridis was in Sean and I having a nice wry smile, because it's Jon Tamoridis, the Greek rider from Euskaltel, who's leading the riders home now. Good on him. Cancellara now leads the World Tour ahead of Peter Sagan and Richie Porte, 351 points. He's a boy. He's a boy. Ahead of Porte, Quintana, Rodriguez, Sauvin Chavanel, Greg Van Avermaet, Contador, Geraint Thomas and Tom Slagter still round out the top 10. But what a fantastic win by Cancellara. Sadly, he passes your record of wins, Sean.
Yes, well, that was something I mentioned this morning. I was hoping to stay on the record with Fabian Cancellara, but unfortunately today I think much too strong, and certainly the deserving winner, because coming into this race as a big favourite, and the way he's ridden out there today, tactically, the team himself, chapeau.
Absolutely brilliant ride, super ride. He certainly looked relieved, but a little bit sore, Sean, at the end, being helped up towards the podium.
Yes, I think both of them seem to be suffering. Seb Van Mark seemed to be, doing a lot of stretching, and you mentioned that, David. He was sitting up straight on the bike in that final 2 kilometres, and that is, always helps a little bit, and everything you can do that will improve your sprint that little bit, you try and do it. But Cancellara looked to be very sore when he got off the bike there, and had to be, helped by some of the team helpers. Paris-Roubaix, everybody suffer, but when you fall and when you crash twice during the week leading up to it, well, then it's going to hurt that bit more. Magnificent ride by the Swiss rider.
4 times a world time trial champion, 3 times a Paris-Roubaix winner, multiple Flanders winner. So he's a good sprinter as well. Not of the Cavendish class, but a very good sprinter. Let's have a little bit of a replay again as they come into the lap and a half. Or you can see Seb Van Mark had Fabian Cancellara up on the barriers, then push him up. All these riders would have done a little bit of riding. Van Mark very nervous, looking around either way to see if Cancellara would jump him, and of course they're looking around to see where the other riders are as well. They're not quite sure whether they're coming up on them. And at this point, Cancellara just winding it up. Van Mark decides to up the pace and lead it out here. And then Cancellara again rides him up to the barriers again, and then comes down immediately. Cancellara responding, still in the saddle. Is on that final bend, out of turn 4, and Van Mark just missing by about a bike length. I don't know, possibly if he'd have kept him up there a bit longer, who knows? Who knows? It's a very shallow velodrome though, this one. Very big as well. Riders still coming in. Congratulations to everybody who's finished Paris-Roubaix. And of course, congratulations to everybody who did the Paris-Roubaix challenge yesterday. If you finished that, it was a lot colder than today, that's for sure. And commiserations to riders like, well, commiserations to Zdeněk Štýbar, who looked to be in the position of his life. Somebody said, surely not the biggest day of his life. He's been double world champion in cyclocross. That's true, but on the road, for sure. I don't think he'd have ever turned up the chance of winning a Paris-Roubaix. It turns you into an absolute legend. Third for the podium then, Nicky Terpstra, out sprinting Greg van Avermaet and Fabian Cancellara in the end. Third place for the Netherlands national champion Terpstra. Rode a good race, looked a little tired towards the end, maybe just knocking it back. Knew he was going to come to the velodrome. And receives his medal for third spot. Very popular, Nicky Terpstra. Certainly a rider capable of winning this race, Sean.
Yes, well, I think the past 2 years, last year he was very much up there as well. This year, you know, getting on the podium. I think he will be thinking in the next couple of years, you know, possibly of winning his Paris-Roubaix.
Well, we just did a quick look at it as Sepp van Mark comes up on to the podium to get his second place. Now, we're just looking at the timings. We think it's not official yet, but we think this is the second fastest Roubaix of all time. The fastest being the 1964 edition with Peter Post the winner. Much longer, 265, but far less sections of cobbles than there are these days. That's a great result. Chapeau to Sepp van Mark. Missing out by just about a bike length to Fabian Cancellara. Sean, you've been in this position in classics in your time, and just missing out on a top spec, it must be, especially for a young rider, it must be absolutely gutting.
Yes, well, it depends on how the race went. If you felt that you give it your 100%, and there was a rider that was stronger you in the end, well, then there's not a lot you can do. But a rider like Sepp van Mark, he is a long career ahead of him. He's a very young rider.
Second place for Sepp van Mark, but another Paris-Roubaix. 3 times now for the Swiss rider and 4-time world time trial champion Fabian Cancellara. He had to work hard from young Sepp van Mark. But having won the Tour of Flanders last weekend, he was absolutely the hot favourite to take this win, but he fell twice in the week. And there was some question marks as to whether he'd be okay. And clearly a little bit sore, but what a collection of those. You can almost build a driveway now. I'm always amazed how they can do that. It weighs a bit, that. And after riding 202 kilometers, he can pick it up and put it over his head. Yep. Magnificent. Well, has he got 4 in him, I wonder? Wouldn't put it past him, would you? 4 wins for Roger de Vlaming, who's incidentally a very good cyclocross rider. Although his brother was better, Eric. Francesco Moser, a three-time winner, is joined by Fabian Cancellara as a three-time winner. Johan Museo, likewise. There's such an illustrious list of names here. Rick van Looy, another three-time winner here in Paris-Roubaix. Well, you picked that stone up, Sean. How'd you do it after 200 plus kilometres? Just the adrenaline?
Yes, I think it's just the adrenaline flow and, you know, just the moment that's in it. And it's amazing the weight of it. When I catch it up now, I ask myself after 250 plus kilometres how you can do that. But you can see Cancellara there, you know, quite comfortably doing it. 10 minutes, 15 minutes ago, he was, you know, really looking tired. But when you win the race, it's amazing where you get the energy from, and you can recover so quickly.
Amazing.